Earlier this week, he said the New York Yankees are 100% going to trade for a starting pitcher. He joins us now to tell us who they're looking at and what they might have to give up. He's ESPN's Buster Olney. He usually joins us on Thursdays. He's joining us on Wednesdays this week. And Buster, who are the Yankees targeting for that trade, and what might they have to give up?
Well, there are not very many sellers at this point. The Chicago Cubs, certainly with Jeff Samardzija, that would be a very expensive proposition. I'm sure that the Yankees are checking in on David Price, like all the other teams, just to see exactly how high of an extra tax they would be charged because they'd be getting David Price in an in-division trade. I think it's much more likely they work from the the second tier list. Jason Hamill, the Cubs. Perhaps someone like a Brandon McCarthy of the Diamondbacks, maybe Wade Miley of the Diamondbacks, guys like that. Jorge De La Rosa. Those are the type of guys they're looking at. Now, as of the last time I specifically checked in on that 48 hours ago, they were not close to doing anything. And if you guys saw those leaked documents that were on Deadspin from the Houston Astros trade conversations over the last 10 months, you saw how some of those ridiculous conversations and trade proposals come up where, the Yankees might ask about a guy like Bud Norris, and the response back is, well, you have to give us your 5 best prospects. Oh. that really reflects what GMs say all the time, that it's really hard to make trades and that the demands at this time of year are just outrageous.
There's no way that Dellin Betances is dealt at any time, right?
I'd be completely shocked for a couple of reasons. One, he's been great. He's a huge part of why the Yankees are still hanging in this race despite really not playing particularly well. And if they were to trade him, they'd have to replace him with somebody, who's like him. I think, too, the fact that they haven't engaged David Robertson in contract talks makes you wonder if the Yankees already have in their mind that Betances is going to potentially be a closer going forward. And 3, I don't necessarily see a trade that they could make for a starting pitcher in which the other team would value Betances as much as the Yankees need them to.
Now, that said, you do expect, you said in one of your blogs that Brian Cashman is ready to roll to make a trade. And by the way, it's Armen and Levack, Joe Bianchino filling in for Armen Williams here on 104.5 The Team, ESPN Radio, talking to Buster Olney, brought to you by Mohawk Army Navy. Brian Cashman's ready to roll with a trade. You expect one to get done eventually, right?
No question, because, and that's what I'm hearing from rival executives. They think the Yankees, the tone of their aggressiveness is such that they're going to do something. And let's face it, CC Sabathia is working his way back, and all signs are good at the moment. But if you were to give truth serum to the people of the Yankees front office and pitching coach Larry Rothschild, they have no idea what CC Sabathia is going to bring to the table, even if he's even going to get to the big leagues. I've been told that one of the options on the table, if this knee problem isn't right at some point, is microfracture surgery, which really set back his timetable. It's possible that he could come back and be productive, but it's also possible the Yankees will continue to have these 2 big holes at the back of their rotation, generally speaking. I know Nunez threw well against Boston last week, but that's why the Yankees are aggressively looking for a starting pitcher, because they probably, as we know, they don't necessarily are counting on a Chase Whitley, a Vidal Nunez to continue to be productive the rest of the year.
Now, speaking of starting pitchers and not really knowing what their futures are, the John Lester saga continues. Is that completely crazy? There's no way that the Red Sox would deal to the Yankees for Lester?
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't do that. The Yankees, while their farm system has had a better year than it did last year, and they actually have had some prospects develop in the first months of this season, there's no way that those 2 teams would talk about a deal. But I think for the Yankees going forward, it's an interesting thing that's happening with Lester, because he's a division opponent. He's the best pitcher on a division opponent, and it really does look like that it's over in terms of the negotiations between Lester and the Red Sox until at least we reach the end of the season. And I'm shocked at how the Red Sox have handled this, because John Lester, from talking with people around him, including some of his teammates, they really believe that if at some point the Red Sox had put 5 years and 100, 110, which would have been a pretty middle of the market type deal for Lester, he would have taken it. But instead they lowballed him, 4 years and $70 million. And then the last couple of weeks they've been trying to reengage to put an offer in front of him, But I think the horse is out the barn door, and that Lester is, we saw him the other day talking about not wanting distractions, contract stuff to go on during the course of the year. And going forward, a huge question for the Red Sox is if John Lester leaves, how the heck do you replace him for 2015?
It's Armen and Levack. Joe Bianchino here filling in for Armen Williams, talking to Buster Olney of ESPN, of course, brought to you by our friends at Mohawk Army Navy. And Buster, we've talked about the Yankees need a pitcher, and everyone agrees that, yeah, they need a starting pitcher. But when you look at this team, their bats have been terrible, and they have been for a while now. And the general thought is, oh, yeah, Carlos Beltran, Brian McCann, these guys will figure it out. When? And will they actually?
Well, it's a fair question at this point, and I'll give you a number that we had going into play on Sunday, I believe it was. The Yankees were 21st out of 30 teams in runs scored, and the Red Sox were 27th out of 30 teams in runs scored. The last time the Yankees and the Red Sox finished in the bottom 10 in runs scored in Major League Baseball was 1925, both of them together in the same year.
Wow.
And that's what we're looking at, two offenses that are struggling. Now, when I've talked to Yankees people, they do believe McCann is putting pressure on himself now. Early in the year, they thought he was hitting into some bad luck. He was losing hits to the shift. Now, there's no doubt. I mean, he's just not swinging the bat well, and he's rolling over a lot of ground balls. And I think because of the offensive problems, that going forward, you have to see progress out of Alfonso Soriano and Brian Roberts. I don't want to say the word immediately, but that's probably close to being true. That at some point they're going to have to get better results out of those two players, in part because they're easy to change. They don't really have that much money invested in a Brian Roberts. They don't have that much money invested in Alfonso Soriano. And I know this, as the Yankees are out there monitoring the market, they're looking at potential replacements for those two guys.
Now it seems funny. We don't hear Alex Rodriguez's name forever, and then all of a sudden the genie's out of the bottle, and he's all we hear about again. What is going on with this whole thing? He was okayed for testosterone in 2007?
That's the report that's coming out from this book that's being excerpted in Sports Illustrated this week. One of the co-authors is actually one of the reporters who worked for the Miami New Times in the biogenesis reporting that exploded last year. And according to that report, and I have not read the first story, I have not read the book, I've only seen a summation of the report, that's what happened, that Alex Rodriguez was approved to use testosterone by Major League Baseball. I can't personally vet for that report, but I just want to put it in context if it's true. And believe me, I was not a fan of how Alex Rodriguez handled things last year. I thought it was appalling. But if, in fact, he did get MLB approval for use of testosterone in 2007, he was literally one of hundreds of players who got approval to use banned substances from not only Major League Baseball, but an independent doctor. And I can't tell you why that is, because I'd have to see the medical records, and we'll probably never get the full reason. Was there a medical condition that required Alex to have this? I don't know. But again, in context, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players have gotten approval for specific use of drugs.
Does this change anything with his sordid past with performance enhancing drugs at all, or is it just another part of the story?
No, it's just one more detail in a larger picture of the story, and who knows? I mean, maybe Alex Rodriguez's side wanted this out there to sort of cloud the picture on whether or not Major League Baseball approved his PED use, which I think we can safe to say would be ridiculous.
It's Armen and Levack. Joe Bianchino here, filling in for Armen Williams, talking to ESPN.com's Buster Olney. And Buster, the Mets now 10 games below 500, 10-20 in one-run games. Sandy Alderson, the GM, before the season said, "Hey, I'm issuing a 90-win challenge for this team." Is Terry Collins' job going to be in jeopardy soon?
I think so. I do. It definitely has that feel. At some point, I think the two questions are going to be: is Terry Collins going to lose his job, and B, will Sandy Alderson want to come back? And he's got a contractual option for next year, and you would presume that the Mets ownership would want to pick that up because of who Sandy's been, and because of the fact that, let's face it, he's taking bullets right now on behalf of the Mets ownership. But I think the one thing to remember, Sandy is from a military family. when you talk to people who worked with him through the years, they'll always tell you Sandy never hints at unhappiness with decisions by people above him, maybe in the way that a colonel would never tell a private that he's not happy with a general's decision. And a lot of his friends are really curious to see what Sandy does for next year, and I think their feeling is a lot of it depends on how much payroll flexibility the Mets could be given, because if they're told, the front office is told, hey, you know what? We had the 8th lowest payroll in baseball this year. We want to do that again next year. Some of his friends wonder if Sandy will want to stick around for that.
All right, so we're looking at the one true wealth the Mets seem to have are these young arms. They're saying they're not going to bring up Noah Syndergaard. Are the Mets sellers? Should Syndergaard come up, or is he potentially trade bait?
Well, if he doesn't come up before the end of this season, that means that it's possible the Mets will be trying to back up his service time clock, and you might not actually see him until the middle of next year, and they'll try to time everybody coming up, all at once as they get Matt Harvey back, as they get Zach Wheeler settled in more. My own opinion is that they should be sellers for what they can sell. For example, Andy Martino does a terrific job covering baseball for the New York Daily News, and he had a report that there actually was some talk about signing Daniel Murphy to a long-term deal. And I think Murphy's a really nice player, and I think he would have trade value this year. But the idea of signing him to, say, a $10 million a year contract at a time when your payroll's at $85 million, that's too high a percentage. When you have David Wright, committed to his salary, and Curtis Granderson making $10, $12, $13 million a year, if you throw on a Danny Murphy on top of that, you're basically eating up all the flexibility of your payroll. And so to me, yeah, absolutely I'd be sellers because they're not going to contend this year.
All right, Buster, this kind of has become a little bit of a tradition. We ask you some ridiculous question about what the Mets are doing, and I think this week it has to be this question, and we'll get you out of here with this. The Mets have July 1st has come. Bobby Bonilla just got his annual check this week from the New York Mets. And look, I know it's not the worst contract of all time with A-Rod's contract and some others out there, but they're paying a guy who retired in 2001 through 2035. How ridiculous is that deal?
I'll give you another one. His son was drafted by a team, and I'm trying to remember which team drafted him in the amateur draft, and his one general manager pointed out to me that even after Bobby's son signs, Bobby Sr. will be making more money in baseball than his son, who's currently active.
It's just insane. I feel like it's
so absurd.
It's almost like he won one of those scratch-offs, like win $1 million for life or whatever.
Thank you to the Mets.
Right.
And thank you to you, Buster Olney. We appreciate it every week.
Buster, make sure you have a great 4th of July. Any big plans?
Just going to throw my kids in the pool and enjoy the warm weather and watch some baseball.
If anybody deserves it, it's certainly you, my friend.
Sounds like the perfect holiday. Thanks so much, Buster. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Have a great day.